The throne room of Queen Seralia was quiet. Once filled with music and voices, it now felt cold and empty. She sat on her tall silver seat, her long dark robe flowing like water around her. Her face was calm, but her red eyes were full of sadness. She had not smiled for many days. Her daughter princess Kalira was missing. Kalira had been on a peace journey to a human colony. It was supposed to be safe. It was a small event to meet with human leaders and learn about their ways. But something went wrong. The ship never returned. Only pieces of it were found floating in space. The royal guards searched everywhere. Spy drones flew to the far edges of the galaxy. Warriors were sent to the nearby systems. But there was no sign of the princess. Some believed Kalira had died in the crash. Others whispered that the humans had taken her. Many feared war would come again. Queen Seralia locked herself away. She refused to eat for days. Her heart ached like it had been torn in half. Her people respected her strength, but even the strongest queen could feel the pain of a mother on the other side of the galaxy. In a quiet human colony called Raven's Reach lived a man named Darren. He was a former soldier. Strong, quiet, and always watching. He had once fought in the Virexian-Human War. After the war ended, he left the military and chose to live far from the big cities. Darren was not like most men. He did not care for fame or glory. He had seen enough battles. All he wanted was peace and silence. But peace does not last forever. One morning he heard something unusual on the radio. A young girl with glowing skin had been spotted near the ruins of an old bio-research center. People thought she was dangerous. Others thought she was a ghost. Darren listened carefully. Something about the description bothered him, the glowing skin, the way she spoke in a strange, noble voice. He remembered stories from the war. He remembered what the Virexian royals looked like. He had a feeling. A strong one. That girl might be the missing alien princess. He had a choice to make. He could stay in his cabin and ignore it like everyone else. Or he could go out there into danger and find her. Darren packed his gear. A water pack, a med kit, a basic translator, and a few old weapons. He left a message on his console. If I don't return, I went to find the girl. The ruins of the bio-research center were dark and broken. Long vines had grown over the walls. Strange machines lay half buried in the dust. The wind howled. Through the cracks, he moved slowly, quietly. His boots made no sound on the metal floor. His eyes scanned every shadow. Then he saw her. She was hiding behind a fallen control panel. Her skin was a pale silver blue, soft and glowing slightly in the dark. Her white hair was messy. Her dress was torn. Her large eyes looked at him with fear. She was weak, thin, scared, but even in her broken state, she had the look of royalty. Darren raised both hands to show he meant no harm. I'm not here to hurt you, he said softly. She didn't answer. She backed away. He took a step closer and placed his weapons on the ground. Then he slowly pulled out a small packet of food and a bottle of clean water. He placed them in front of her and stepped back. She looked at the items, then at him. After a moment, she took the water and drank it quickly. Then she ate slowly, never taking her eyes off him. He waited. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was weak, but clear. Who are you? My name is Darren. I'm human. I heard about a girl out here. I think you might be someone very important. She looked down. I am Kalira, daughter of Queen Seralia. Darren nodded. I thought so. Tears formed in her eyes. They tried to kill me, the ones who took me. They said I was a threat, even to my own people. Darren didn't speak. He knew how cruel war could be. I don't want to die here, she whispered. You won't, he said. I'll get you back home? Kalira looked at him, confused. Why would a human help me? Darren gave a small smile. Not all humans are enemies, and not all wars need to go on forever. For the first time in days, Kalira felt hope. Darren helped Kalira walk through the ruined halls of the old research center. Her steps were slow, and her hands trembled from weakness. She had been alone for too long, hiding in the dark with little food and water. Darren gave her a blanket from his pack and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. Outside, The sky was red from dust storms, and the land was dry and cracked. This part of the colony had been abandoned after the war. No one lived here now, only scavengers and dangerous. Machines wandered these empty places. "We need to get out of this zone," Darren said. "It's not safe here." Kalira nodded quietly as they walked. Darren explained the plan. There was a small outpost 2 days away. He had an old contact there, someone who might still owe him a favor. From that outpost, he could contact someone with long-range communications to reach the Virexian Empire, but the road would not be easy. Bandits, old warbots, and wild creatures roamed the wasteland. And now that Darren had Kalira, someone might be tracking her. He had seen too many wars to believe her disappearance was an accident. They reached a collapsed tunnel by nightfall. The entrance was blocked with rubble, but Darren found a way inside through a crack in the wall. Inside it was dark and cold. But safe from the winds outside, he started a small fire using dried cables and fuel paste from his kit. Kalira sat near it, silent, her arms wrapped around her knees. "You should eat," Darren said. Handing her a ration pack, she took it, but her hands still shook. Darren watched her for a moment. "You've been through a lot." Kalira looked up. "They told me the humans were cruel, that they only wanted to control us, but you're not like that." Darren shrugged. "I was a soldier once. I fought in the war, but after that, I saw too much pain. I left." Kalira studied his face. "You don't seem like a man who runs away." "I didn't run," he said softly. "I walked away from hate." They sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, "Do you think my mother is looking for me?" Darren looked into the fire. "Yes, I think she is. And I think she's hurting." Kalira's eyes grew moist. "I was supposed to make peace with your people. Now I've failed." "You're still alive," Darren replied. "That means you still have a chance to do something good." The next morning, they moved again. The land was rough and dry. Cracked roads stretched like scars across the ground. Old broken machines lay half-buried in the sand. Some still twitched with sparks. Kalira stayed close to Darren. She was scared, but she trusted him now. They crossed a valley filled with tall, black rocks. As they climbed down, Darren suddenly raised his hand. "Wait," he whispered. Kalira froze. Darren crouched and pointed toward the shadows ahead. 3 figures moved quietly between the rocks. They had weapons homemade but deadly. "Bandits. They'll smell money on you," Darren said softly. "And if they find out who you are?" Kalira whispered, "What do we do?" "We go around them." Darren led her off the path and into the narrow side of the valley. The rocks were sharp and steep, but it was safer than facing the bandits. Head-on after an hour of climbing, they reached a ridge and looked down. The bandits were still moving, unaware. Darren exhaled in relief. That night they found shelter in an old transport wreck. Inside was a broken pilot seat and a few rusted supply crates. Kalira sat down with a sigh. Her legs ached and her eyes were tired. "Do you ever feel afraid?" she asked. Darren thought for a moment. "Yes, but I don't let fear stop me." She gave a small smile. "I wish I was that strong." "You are?" he replied. "You're still walking, aren't you?" She laughed softly, the sound dried but real as they shared another meal. Kalira began to open up more. She told Darren about her home, about the tall crystal towers, the songs her mother sang, and the garden where she used to play with her pet bird. Darren listened quietly. He had never heard someone speak of such beauty. In return, he shared his past too. He spoke of the battlefield, of the screams and fire, and of the moment he saw a child crying in the middle of ruins, a child from the enemy side. He had picked the child up and carried them to safety. "That's when I knew I couldn't keep fighting," he said. Kalira looked at him with wide eyes. "You saved an enemy child?" "Yes," Darren said. "It didn't matter where they came from. They were just a child." Kalira lowered her head. "Maybe the galaxy doesn't need more warriors. Maybe it needs more people like you." Darren didn't answer, but inside her words stayed with him. By the 3rd day, Kalira was walking with more strength. Her legs still hurt, and her body was tired, but her mind was clear. The fear that had lived inside her for days was now slowly turning into something else. Hope, Darren led her through a canyon of old stone and twisted metal. The sun above was pale, and the wind carried dust through the broken lands. They had reached the edge of a battlefield, one that hadn't seen life for years. "Is this from the war?" Kalira asked. Darren nodded. "One of the worst ones. Many died here, humans and Virexians both." Kalira paused, looking at the wreckage. Huge machines lay like fallen giants. Tanks, crashed airships, and the remains of once proud banners flapped in the dry wind. She walked slowly among the ruins, her fingers brushing old steel and cracked armor. She stopped at a rusted memorial plate. The words were worn out but still readable. "For all who fell not enemies, just victims of war." Kalira stood in silence. "I was taught to hate humans." Darren looked at her. "I was taught to hate your kind too. And now?" She asked. "I don't hate anyone," he said simply. "Hate only creates more graves." They kept moving. The trail to the outpost wasn't far now, but Darren was more cautious. He had seen strange signs tracks in the sand, small broken devices near their path, and a humming sound in the air. "They're watching," he muttered. Kale Aya turned to him. "Who? Someone who doesn't want peace," Darren answered. That night, they found an old Earth-Virexian monument at the edge of the battlefield. It had been built after the peace treaty. The base was cracked and the lights no longer worked, but the two figures carved in stone still stood, one human soldier, one Virexian warrior standing side by side. Kalira walked to the statue and touched the stone gently. "Did they really fight together?" "They did," Darren said. "They saved a city together, died doing it." She looked at him. "You know a lot about this." "I was there," he replied quietly. "I watched." "That battle? I was younger then?" Kalira sat on a flat rock near the statue. "Tell me what happened." So he told her. He spoke about the firestorm, the falling skyships, and the moment when both sides realized they were surrounded by something worse, machines from an old enemy species, reawakened by mistake. The human and Virexian leaders had no choice but to fight together. They didn't speak the same language, Darren said, but they understood each other. They covered each other in battle until the very end. Kalira listened without interrupting. Her eyes were wide. She had never heard this version of the story before. After a long pause, she whispered, "Why is it so hard for others to believe?" "In peace? Because peace is slow," Darren replied. "War is loud and quick." A soft smile touched her lips. "You speak like a teacher," Darren chuckled. "Maybe I've had too much time to think." That night, they slept under the stars, near the monument. The air was cold, but the silence was peaceful. For the first time since her capture, Kalira slept without fear, but peace didn't last long. At dawn, Darren woke to a sound, a low hum that didn't belong to the wind. He grabbed his scanner. A small light blinked on the screen. "Drone, nearby." Kalira sat up quickly. "Do you think it's from my mother?" Darren frowned. "No, the signal is Virexian, but not royal. More like military. Rogue military." Suddenly, a laser beam shot past them, striking the ground. Dirt and stone flew into the air. "Get down!" Darren shouted, pulling Kalira behind the monument. More shots followed. From the cliffs above, 3 figures in dark armor appeared. They were Virexian soldiers, but not official ones. Their armor had no royal marks. These were deserters. Or worse, Kalira gasped. "They were the ones who took me." Darren cursed under his breath. "They're still after you." He fired back with a small pulse rifle from his pack. One shot hit a rock, the other clipped a soldier's shoulder. The attackers moved fast, circling around. "We need to move," Darren said. "We can't fight all of them from here." They ran down a narrow path beside the cliff, dodging blasts and jumping over broken ground. Darren led Kalira to an old communications tower. It was damaged, but its steel base still stood. "Inside!" he shouted. They slipped into the base, locking the metal door behind them. It wouldn't hold long, but it gave them time. Kale Aya leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "What do they want?" "To stop peace," Darren replied. "If you return home, your people might listen." "They don't want that." They want war to continue so they stay in power. Kalira looked at him, afraid but determined. Then we can't let them win. Darren smiled. That's the spirit. He reached for the console inside the tower. It was old, but he could reroute a signal. If I can get this working, he said, we can send a message to someone I trust at the outpost. He paused, then looked at her. Can you cover me? Kalira stared for a second, then grabbed the pulse rifle he had dropped. She nodded. I'll try. Far across the galaxy, the royal palace stood tall under the twin moons of Vyrexia. Queen Seralia sat on her throne, her eyes cold and sharp like blades. The latest report in her hands made her breath catch. Her daughter was alive. A message had arrived through secret channels. It came from a human outpost, coded and cautious. The message said, I have the princess. She is safe, bringing her back. Trust me. It was signed by a man named Darren. The queen's hand tightened around the message. She had prayed for her daughter's life, but now anger burned within her. Why was a human holding her daughter? Why had no one from her own people rescued Kalira? She summoned her war council. They claim she is safe, she said aloud, her voice steady. But we cannot trust this human. For all we know, he's a mercenary trying to earn a reward. One general stepped forward. Shall we send forces to retrieve the princess? Yes, she said, but do not harm her. Bring her home. And if this human resists, arrest him. She paused. But if he is lying, if Kalira is hurt in any way, I want that man brought to me in chains. Meanwhile, on the dusty edge of Raven's Reach inside the broken tower, Darren worked fast. He tapped into the console, rewiring old circuits and bypassing the fried core. Sparks flew, but the screen flickered to life. Kalira stood near the entrance, holding the pulse rifle tightly. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed on the rocks outside. She could hear footsteps. The rogue Vyrexians were close. Darren connected to a private channel. Come on, Jack, he whispered. Pick up. A voice crackled through. Darren, that you? You're not dead? Not yet, Darren replied. I need help. I've got someone important with me. Vyrexian royalty? Wait. What? I'll explain later. Just get here fast. Bring a secure shuttle and be ready for a fight. Jack's voice grew serious. Copy that. Hang tight. Darren closed the signal. Help is coming. Kalira turned her head slightly. Do you trust him? With my life, Darren replied. Suddenly the door shook. A blast hit it hard, bending the metal. They found us, Kalira said. Darren grabbed his other weapon and moved beside her. We hold them off, just for a few more minutes. The door burst open with a loud crash. 3 armored Vyrexians stormed inside. Darren fired first, hitting one in the leg. Kalira followed, shooting wildly but keeping the enemies back. The attackers didn't expect her to fight. One hesitated. Princess? He gasped. Kale Aya stepped forward. You betrayed the crown. You kidnapped me. He raised his weapon, but Darren tackled him before he could fire. The fight was fast and fierce. Dust flew, weapons hummed, and the small room shook with noise. At last, the final attacker ran. Darren stood breathing hard, one arm bleeding. Kalira rushed to him. You're hurt. I've had worse, he said, giving her a weak smile. Soon the sound of an approaching shuttle echoed through the sky. Jack's ship landed just outside the tower, and a ramp extended toward them. Jak, a tall man with gray hair and a rough beard, stepped out with 2 other humans in armor. Well? Jack said, raising an eyebrow at the sight of Kalira. You weren't joking. No time to explain, Darren said. We need to move. They climbed aboard quickly. As the shuttle lifted into the sky, Kalira looked down at the battlefield below. The old war zone, the fallen monument, and the broken tower all faded into the distance. Inside the ship, Jack patched up Darren's arm. You better tell me what's going on, Darren nodded. She was being held by rogue Vyrexians, left to die. I couldn't walk away, Kalira added. He saved my life. Jack looked at her, then back at Darren. You know the Queen will send half her army after you. I know, Darren said. But I'm taking her back myself, face to face. Jack frowned. That's risky. She needs to see the truth, Kalira said quietly. She needs to know who really helped me. Jack sighed. You two are either brave or insane. The journey to the Verexian border took several hours. When they arrived, they were met by a fleet of royal ships. A voice came over the channel. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself. Darren stepped forward. This is Darren. I'm returning the princess. There was silence for a moment. Then, remain still. We will escort you. Their shuttle was surrounded and pulled into a massive mothership. Inside the docking bay, rows of royal guards stood in formation. At the center was Queen Seralia herself. Kalira stepped out first. The moment the queen saw her, her strong face softened. She rushed forward and embraced her daughter tightly. My child, she whispered. You're safe. Kalira held her mother back, tears falling. I missed you, mother. Queen Seralia turned to Darren, her eyes narrowed. She stepped forward slowly. You brought her back, she said. Darren nodded. Yes, you entered. Verexian space, took the princes without permission. And now you expect thanks? I don't want thanks, Darren said. I only wanted her to live. The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to Kalira. Tell me everything, and Kalira did. In front of the guards, the advisors, and the queen she told the full story, how the rogue soldiers took her, how Darren found her, protected her, and never once treated her as anything but a person in need. She ended with one clear sentence. Without him, I would not be alive. The queen looked around. Everyone was silent. She took a deep breath and bowed her head to Darren. You have done something no one else could. You may return to your people. With honor. Queen Seralia stood silent after bowing her head to the human warrior. The whole room watched in complete silence. No one could believe what had just happened. A Verexian queen, strong, proud, and feared by many, had just shown respect to a human. Darren stood still, unsure of what to say. He had expected suspicion, maybe even arrest, but not this. The queen slowly rose, her red eyes full of emotion. Come with me, she said firmly. Darren looked at Kalira, who nodded gently. Go. She needs to hear more. He followed Queen Seralia down a quiet hallway lined with glowing crystal walls. Guards stayed behind. It was just the two of them now. The silence between them felt heavy. Finally, they entered a private chamber. It was smaller, simpler, filled with soft light and the scent of flowers. The queen motioned for him to sit. She remained standing. I want the full truth, she said. From your mouth. Darren nodded. I found her in the ruins of an old research base near Raven's Reach. She was scared, weak, and alone. I gave her food, water, and helped her escape. Why? The queen asked sharply. Why would a human soldier risk so much for an alien girl? Darren didn't hesitate. Because no one else was going to. Because she's not just your daughter, she's a child. She was innocent. She needed help. The queen's face didn't change. You don't understand our history. My people do not trust easily. Neither do mine, Darren replied. But someone has to start. She walked toward a window and looked out over the shining city below. Years ago, your people destroyed one of our colonies. Hundreds died. My husband among them. Darren looked down. And we lost cities too. I was there. I saw pain on both sides. She turned to him slowly. So why do you not hate us? I did, he said honestly, for a long time. But hate eats you from the inside. One day I saved a child during battle. She wasn't human. She was just afraid. That's when I knew war makes us blind. I didn't want to be blind anymore. Queen Seralia looked at him long and hard. You sound like someone who carries pain. I do, Darren said. But I try to carry it in a way that helps others. She walked closer, stopping just a few steps from him. You have changed my daughter? I can see it in her eyes. She speaks of you with respect. Darren nodded quietly. But, the queen added, my people will not accept your actions so easily. They still see humans as a threat. I didn't come here for honor or reward, Darren said. I only came to bring her back. The queen studied him for a long moment, then she gave a slow nod. There's one thing I must ask. Listening, Darren replied. I want you to stand in front of my council tomorrow. Speak what you spoke here. Let them hear it. Darren's eyebrows rose. Your council? They won't want me there. They won't, she said. But if there's any hope for future peace, they must hear it from a human. Darren thought for a moment, then he gave a slow nod. All right, I'll do it. Later that night, Kalira visited him in the guest chamber. The room was warm, clean, and quiet, but Darren sat on the edge of the bed, thoughtful. You met with my mother? She asked. I did, he said. She wants me to speak to the council. Kalira looked both surprised and proud. That's a big step. I just hope they listen, Darren replied. They will, she said softly. Because I'll be there too. The next day, the royal council gathered in the Star Hall. Dozens of high-ranking leaders sat in curved rows. At the front, Queen Seralia stood tall beside her daughter. Darren walked forward, calm but alert. He stood in the center circle. Some council members frowned, others whispered. A few looked openly angry. One elder stood. Why is a human in this chamber? Queen Seralia raised her hand. He is here by my command. Listen to what he says. Darren stepped forward and spoke. He told them how he found Kalira, how she had been left to die, how she trusted him even though he was human. He told them how she showed courage, how she defended him, and how he saw her not as an alien but as someone who deserved life. I don't ask for your trust, Darren finished. Only your understanding. War makes enemies, but peace is a choice. The room was silent. Then Kalira stepped forward. I stand with him, she said. He saved my life. I will never forget it. Whispers spread across the room. Some still looked doubtful, but many stared at her with respect. One council member finally spoke. Perhaps not all humans are enemies. Queen Seralia looked at her daughter, then at Darren. We have a long path ahead, she said. But today it begins with truth. After Darren's speech and Kalira's support in the Royal Council, the chamber slowly began to change. Where there had been distrust and anger, now there was silence and thought. No one clapped, no one cheered, but something important had shifted. Queen Seralia rose from her seat and looked around the room. Let this day be remembered. A human, once seen as an enemy, chose to protect a Virexian royal. He asked for nothing. He risked everything. Her voice was strong. I, Queen Seralia of the Virexian Empire, named Darren as guardian of the crown, a title given to those who protect royal blood, even at the cost of their own lives. Gasps filled the room. A human had never received such a title in Virexian history. Darren stood still, unsure of how to respond. He had not come for titles. He looked at Kalira. She smiled at him with pride. The queen continued, He may return to his world or remain as an honored guest of the Empire. The choice is his. Darren bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. But I don't belong in palaces. I think I'll go back to quiet places. Then you'll leave with our respect, she said with a nod. The next day, a formal farewell was arranged. Kalira walked with Darren through the royal garden, a peaceful place filled with glowing plants and floating lights. The air was cool, and the stars above were clear and still. You could stay, Kalira said softly. I've never been good with fancy rooms and royal dinners, Darren said with a small smile. Kalira laughed. I've seen how. You eat field rations, that makes sense. They walked slowly. Darren looked around the garden. It's beautiful here, peaceful. I hope it stays that way. Kalira nodded. I want to build something better. A future where humans and Virexians don't hide behind fear. You'll be a good queen one day, Darren said. She looked at him. I couldn't have made it without you. You made it because you're strong, he replied. I just cleared the path. A few moments passed in silence. Finally, she reached into a small pouch and handed him something. It was a crystal pendant shaped like a star, glowing faintly. This was my father's, she said. It's given only to those who earn the royal family's deepest trust. I want you to have it. Darren hesitated, then took the pendant with care. I'll keep it safe. They stood for a while, saying nothing. No grand words, no big goodbye. Just two souls who had walked through darkness together and found light on the other side. Later, Darren boarded Jack's shuttle. Jack leaned back in the pilot seat and looked over at him. "Well," he said, "you're famous now." "I hate being famous," Darren muttered. Jack laughed. "Good, now I don't have to worry about you going soft." As the shuttle lifted off, Darren looked back one last time at the palace. Kalira stood near a balcony, watching. She raised her hand in a gentle wave. He waved back, then the ship flew higher, and the planet slowly disappeared beneath the stars. Back on Earth's colony borders, rumors of Darren's story spread fast. Some didn't believe it, others were shocked. But many on both sides started asking new questions. Could peace truly grow between humans and Virexians? Would this one story lead to something greater? Months passed. Darren returned to his quiet life. He repaired his old cabin, planted fresh crops, and walked alone through the hills as he used to. But something inside him had changed. He was no longer a man hiding from the world. He had made a difference, and that thought brought him peace. Every few weeks, a small message came from across the stars. They were short, sometimes a poem, sometimes just a simple, "Are you well?" But he always replied. One day, a package arrived. Inside was a carved stone. On it was a message from Kalira. Peace grows slowly, but it always finds the light. He placed the stone near his window. That evening, Darren sat outside, watching the sky. Stars blinked gently above. Somewhere out there, a young alien princess was building something better, something strong, kind, and lasting, and it had all started because one human refused to walk away.